Pullinger, Woodhead, Thomas, Brown, Alban, and Leslie Fage. Item 2, declarations of interest. To receive statutory declarations of interest from members in relation to any item on the agenda, whether that's pecuniary or non-pecuniary. So do we have any pecuniary interests? No. Any non-pecuniary interests? Councillor Russell.
I think I better declare for item 11G, because I live fairly close to that property.
Thank you. And Councillor Strawn?
Item 16A.
16A, Councillor Strawn. Thank you. Item 3, Town Mayor's announcements. I don't have any announcements this week, and I don't think Councillor Russell does either. So we move on. Item 4, public open session, to adjourn for a period of up to 15 minutes to allow members of the public to put questions or to address the council through the chairman pertaining to matters listed on the agenda. Each speaker will give their name and will have 1 3-minute slot. So we don't have, well, we have some speakers later, but do we have any members of the public online, Karen? No? Okay. 4 people on holiday, that's fine. So we go on to item 5, so invited speaker. So item 5A, to receive an update on areas where central and local government overlap, and to discuss items around town centre, housing, Black Cat roundabout, GPs, various important things going on at the parliamentary level. And we welcome Richard Fuller, Member of Parliament. So Richard, the floor is yours. Do you want to just pop your microphone on? That's right, you don't have to stand if you don't want to, but it's up to you.
I got 2 pieces of advice before I started. The first was to switch on your microphone, and the second was to stand up. So I managed not to switch on my microphone, and then I definitely stand up. Mr. Mayor, it's a great pleasure. I think it's the first time I've spoken formally for Town Council since becoming an MP, and certainly since COVID. So it's a great pleasure to be here. There's a whole slew of areas down. I think we can get to that in some Q&A, but maybe I'll just tell you within those some of the particular areas of focus that I've had, so you can have a sense of sort of what I've been focused on. When you become a member of parliament, you don't start, things don't just start. There's already a flow of things happening and you fit into what that's going on. And so I made my own assessment around that back in December 2019. And the number one issue then, the number one issue now, as far as I'm concerned, is our area is facing far too much pressure for development in terms of housing development. That is a fundamental driver of problems and issues in this part of the world. If I tell you that I check every year on the house building statistics for my constituency compared to the national average, and I say that every year, and this is not just since, but also going back with my predecessor, this area is growing between 3 and 5 times the national average, year in, year out. And that puts tremendous pressure on local authorities, town councils in terms of planning, issues to do with town centres, and I'll also on to other areas of public services. So as your member of parliament, one of the key things that I've tried to understand is what has been driving that, because obviously there is the private sector pressure, people wanting to live in and around a beautiful part of the country, great communication links, close to London. What are the other pressures that are affecting that level of house building? And the most significant one was the 2016 National Infrastructure Document, which is commonly known as the Oxfam ARC. And that was put together by Lord Adonis. And that plan essentially said, to achieve growth in this part of the world, which can create tremendous amounts of economic value for the country, we need to connect Oxford and Cambridge with a superhighway. That's what regular people call a dual carriageway, and a railway line from Oxford to Cambridge. But deep in that document, and in my view, the real rationale, because I've scoured the world to find another document that says the greatest way to make 2 great universities, towns work is to connect them, because nowhere else does that. Deep in that is the real reason behind Lord Adonis's plan, which is to build 1 million houses in this part of the world. And when you think that Cambridgeshire has Greenbelt, Buckinghamshire has Greenbelt, Oxfordshire has Greenbelt, we have very little protection, you know where that pressure is going to be. So as your member of parliament, one of the things I try to do is, first of all, unpick the 1 million house building target that has gone. Second of all, to de-emphasize and preferably to get rid of the Oxfam ARC that has now been de-emphasized as a project in local government. And the final part is to make sure that the way in which we do infrastructure build, which is part of that plan, is to our benefit. And I want to just touch on 2 points of that, if I may, Mr. Mayor. So first of all, Black Cat Roundabout and the extension of the road to Cambridge it basically is a slam dunk. That's going to happen. Black Cat has already got the next level of approval, I think last week. And the extension of the A421 to the A428 to Cambridge is going to go ahead. I can't see government backing off on that, even with the additional public expenditure pressures that there are likely to be. But what that does is it then calls into question, well, what's the next best part of infrastructure that we need? The bureaucrats, Lord Adonis, felt that a railway line was the most imperative thing to have. And that is in fact being built. The bit from Oxford to Bicester is being built. They're looking at the part from Milton Keynes to Bedford. And there have been proposals for a route from Bedford to Cambridge. I have worked with, and I don't want to go into the details here because it doesn't directly affect you, but to say that the process of the consultation, the management by East West Rail of that process has been below the minimum acceptable standards would be, I think, a fair, short summary. And they have now driven that plan into the buffers when it comes to, does it have a business case? The business case was due to be presented at the start of June. That was already a delay. It's been delayed again and again and again. I have to say to you, Mr. Mayor, councillors, I don't think that business case stacks up. And more importantly, in my view, it is not the next most important infrastructure for this part of the world. The next most important part of infrastructure is to do something with the A1. And that is important because we know already that with Black Cat Roundabout changes, there will be a greater flow of traffic coming south. We know that there will still be house building pressures. We can see it in Cambridgeshire. We can see it in the north of Bedfordshire. You see it here yourselves. That will put more traffic onto the A1. The A1 is a well-known established part of infrastructure. It is a responsibility for this government in this time frame, not to dust off the plans to the 1990s when they last looked at it, but to look at it afresh with some new solutions for this area. So I just want to put it absolutely clearly, as your member of parliament, I am now, and I don't think I've actually said this publicly, properly, but I am now formally opposed to East West Rail. And my priority, and this was my priority anyway to get it done, but now it's now with the additional pressure, the priority needs to be on the A1. There are some other issues I'd be interested in people's views, particularly at the moment with the consultation about the closure of Caldecott, the cut across to Caldecott. People have particular views about that, the issue of pressure. On active travel, and then after that, I'll just go to GPs and then maybe stop for questions. On active travel, really led by the town council in Potton, we've been looking at ways in which we can provide, or we can encourage the connection between villages. So Potton to Sandy, to Thamesford, to Gamblingay, potentially to Biggleswade, and then ultimately even potentially through Moggahanger to Bedford, for a really interesting active travel network. It fits with a lot of what the new house building and what people want to have happen. People aren't necessarily going to cycle all the way to Cambridge. I'm not foolish about that. Well, I don't know, people, maybe you do cycle to Cambridge. I wouldn't cycle every day to work to Cambridge. But we've got a meeting coming up with the ministers whenever we know who the ministers are. We had one with a minister that has to be put back to talk about that. So if there are particular, what I'm not quite sure on that, Mr. Mayor, is Biggleswade's view about connections to Potton, Sandy and others. I know that it's almost there and whether it's clear or not. And I've had some discussions, particularly with Madeline. And Madeline and I have also been talking, as many of you know, on access for all with the railway station. Any comments on that? I'd be happy to take views. Finally, on GPs, I talked about the pressure of house and planning. One of the ways that is most keenly felt by constituents governed by what I get in my inbox is the issue of, can you get a GP appointment? I can't get to see my GP. I'm on the phone and I never get through. So I've spent lots of the last 6 months going and speaking to pretty much all the GP practices across North and East Bedfordshire to try and understand what the issues are on the ground. I've been to the two main practices here in Biggleswade, and I'm in the process of putting together a report. The fundamental issues here are not the ones that are common across the country, which is because of COVID, there's a backlog in GP appointments, all that. It is housing. It is the pressure of housing. The average GP list has gone up 40% since the turn of the century. And the number of GPs over that period has remained precisely the same. Notwithstanding within that, the number of GPs that are partner GPs, the ones who drive their business to do that extra bit, has gone down 30%. Now, there are changes, national changes coming about seeing different people, different types of consultations, all that makes sense. But fundamentally, on my agenda for the next year ahead, Mr. Mayor, is to try and get recognition that for places that have already had substantial housing growth, there needs to be a recognition that there needs to be a further break on the national targets that come down to local authority, to Central Beds Council, if there is a clear case that the health services aren't keeping up. And I know I have good cause for that, because in the 2019 manifesto upon which this government was elected, there was a thing called infrastructure first. And that said, for new developments, we've got to make sure we're going to legislate to say you've got to put in the school places, you've got to put in the doctor's surgeries, you've got to put in the doctors before you allow those new houses to be built. Very good policy. I just want to make it retrospective for areas across North East Bedfordshire, because as I said, for many, many years now, we've been growing 3 to 5 times the national average. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you ever so much for that update, Richard. Comments and questions from councillors, please. Councillor Strawn.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to hear you supporting the A1 improvements, having been involved in the 1990s. We've got it halfway through and then it got pulled. The thing that causes me concern about the Black Cat at the moment, and I'm not up to speed with that, is it's all very well doing the east-west junctions, but is it going to be done in a way that will actually cater for, hopefully, a motorway coming north and south for the A1 there? Because I can just see that they'll build a new interlink connection there, and then probably find that they're going to have to dig it all up again 2 or 3 years later if you actually get the A1 upgraded. So perhaps you could just elucidate a bit on that.
Well, you speak with great wisdom, both in terms of how long it goes and also how difficult it is within one department for people to speak to one another. I remember, just very briefly, the railway people in the Department of Transport when we were talking about East West Rail, and the road people talking about Black Cat and the A421. So these are 2 projects going roughly the same area. So how are you planning together? So we don't talk to each other. So it is very project focus. I would say there is a thing called, I think it's called RIS. It's basically the road improvements system, or what's called, I've spoken about. But what I'm trying to do is get a review of the A1 included in the next RIS period. So it won't be that action will be taken, but they start looking at it again. And that's where they'll look at the implications from a Black Cat. That's when they'll be forced to look at those things, forced to look at what they may do to the road, whether it'll be a realignment, whether it'll be a move, whether they might experiment with underpass, substantial underpass that takes it below ground. I've had conversations with Sandy Town Council about it. Very happy to continue discussions here.
Thank you. Further questions, Councillor Knight.
Thank you very much for coming and for sharing your views this evening. Just a quick question on the road improvements. I'd be interested in your view on so-called smart motorways, which is obviously an experiment the government's tried as a lower cost way to improve road capacity. And I think there have been quite a large number of reported accidents and hazards associated with that. So I'll be interested in whether you think that is something that you can support, or whether you would like to see any new projects, including provision for a full hard shoulder, please.
No, it's a very fair question. I think Grant Chapps, who's the Transport Secretary, has put a moratorium on any new smart motorways. I don't know if any of you have driven up where that's the case. Frankly, I'm getting more confused by going on a smart. Maybe I'm not smart enough for a smart motorway. Maybe that's it. But I think the moratorium is a good idea. It's something that was seen as the default way to increase capacity. It is not, should not be seen as a default way to create capacity. So I think we've got that so far. The Secretary of State has said, let's have a moratorium. So my view instinctively is to wait and see what that moratorium tells us about whether these work or not. My expectation is it will come back and say that it's a cloudy picture. And so there won't be any more, because there's no clear case that makes sense. That's my gut feel.
Councillor Russell.
I'm interested that you're trying to get the A1 into the RIS programme. I spent nearly 3 years going to meetings for RIS2, which should have meant that there was a programme for the A1 to go before the minister in 2019. And it seemed to be kicked into the long grass in the end. I couldn't get an answer out of the Highways Agency, as they were then, about what had happened. So all the things we talked about, 3 possible solutions at different levels of cost, were just completely forgotten, and nothing was ever put before the minister. So we not only need to get it into the RIS programme, but we're going to have to make sure that it's followed through and that some solution is found. It won't be cheap. And if the government policy is going to be not to build roads, which is something that, has come out in the last little while, that the government hasn't been very keen on building roads, then I think we're going to have a real fight on our hands. But I think we're all up for it in Biggleswade and Sandy.
And of course, we're not building a road here. What we're trying to do is make an existing road safer. I mean, the fundamental point is that the A1, with the increasing amount of traffic on it, becomes far less safe. The A1 going through towns with increasing populations becomes less safe. This is not about expanding infrastructure. It's about making existing infrastructure appropriate for the communities that it's supposed to serve. And I'll find any argument. I'm a politician. I'll find any argument to try and push the interests of my constituents. So if I can ally with, and I have with colleagues of all parties up in the north of the country who are worried about travel times up to the north, we should talk about that. But the point that I'm trying to get through to Baroness Veer, who is the minister responsible, is this part of the country has fundamentally changed in 20 years. The population is far, far greater. And you'll know from around here, the warehouse and other businesses that are building are far more significant. And we've got, with the Black Cat roundabout, something we can see coming down the junction in 4 or 5 years, which is a substantial streamlining of traffic that's going to pile down to Sandy, screech to a halt. And then what's it going to do between Sandy and the next roundabout in Biggleswade? What's it going to do with the next roundabout in Biggleswade and the south roundabout in Biggleswade? This seems to me to be absolutely what your Member of Parliament should be focused on. And I've just already heard 2 war stories about the past. I just hope that perhaps we can build on what we've done so far and try and make something happen this time. But the situation here, Mr. Mayor, has fundamentally changed.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor North.
You mentioned East West Rail and that you're opposed to it. I noticed in the very short-lived leadership campaign of Grant Shapps, he said specifically that he would cancel the East West Rail from any further development of it. Do you think it will happen? Whatever your own feelings about it, do you think it will happen, or do you think it will be stopped and just go no further?
So let me just be clear. East West Rail was a fantastic concept, destroyed by a really maladroit process. Some of you may be familiar that the Mayor of Bedford put in his preferred option, didn't bother telling any of the councillors. All the councillors, all the wards and the villages are going to be didn't bother telling them, just send it straight in. Very influential report, what local authority says, as you all know, very influential on decisions. The consultation process changed the numbers halfway through. So what was seen as the most preferred route became the second from least preferred route. What was seen as the least preferred route became the most preferred. They didn't bother to tell anyone during the consultation. They changed all the numbers. And just so you know, because I did 2 3-hour sessions on the costs of engineering a railway, trust me, I know nothing about engineering a railway, I know a bit about money. It's all to do with the type of dirt. That is what drives their financial model, or makes a difference. Anyway, it makes a difference to those things. So your question very directly, Councillor North, do I think the new government is going to proceed with it? I don't see how they can. I think given what Mr. Chapp said, and frankly, I already knew that was his view. I don't think he was saying anything particularly new. What is confusing to me is why this particular project that has so little political support now is still sort of working its way around Whitehall. I get a sense of the Sir Humphreys, and that worries me a bit. So that's a little bit outside the norm, but I just think, given what the Secretary of State has now said, that it would be very inappropriate, given that we have so many other pressures on public finances, taxpayers' money to help people with their bills through this winter, many other things in terms of the NHS support. That if someone clearly says something in my department doesn't add up, doesn't make money, that the Treasury isn't pulling it back. But of course, we'll have to wait and see.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Russell?
You've done an awful lot of work on GPs. You spoke about visiting all the practices in the constituency, and I know you've done a lot of work in Parliament. What do you see as the most important things for the government to take forward at a national level? And what else can we do locally? I mean, we've issued a statement that some town councillors have signed with the health authorities, trying to encourage people to use the surgeries in a slightly different way to try and stop some of the log jams. What else can we do locally? What is it about our two practices? But what are the most important things nationally?
My observations would be that we have got a fundamentally screwed up remuneration system for our GPs, which tends to say, which has over the years has squeezed the premium for people to be a partner for the extra work they do to make sure everything's working, the admin. I think that's gone down. That premium, I think, for salaried GPs, the compensation compared with being a locum has changed. So we find many practices across Bedfordshire now only have locums. They only have part-day GPs. So I think, and this is not government, I mean, it has to be sorted out by the health service and GPs, so it's not what the government ministers can do. But I think that really needs, the GP pay structure really needs looking at. There's been views about planning the workforce. I'm not a Stalinist. I think, the best plans you should put there, but ultimately it's about encouraging people and making it attractive people to work. We put too many barriers in the way of people getting into the health service. There's far too much protectionism around different healthcare professionals. Even right now, this last week, and the government really needs to look at this. We have a number of qualified doctors from Ukraine who've come here as refugees who want to work, and they can't because we haven't worked out whether we can recognize their qualifications. We should be on the front foot looking to fill some of our healthcare gaps around the world as best we can, and certainly not standing in the way of people who've been fleeing Russian invasion and want to work in this country whilst they're here, and giving them a chance to help on things. And then finally, what I would say, if I can read the IT. If you want, you have two practices here. I'm not going to say anything about it, except for I think between the two of them and others, what I recognized was the choice of your phone system became quite a fundamental driver of people's satisfaction subsequently. It's an easy decision that you might make and you might not see the consequences, but something as simple as that can have long-term consequences. I think when it comes to IT, when it comes to patient records, when it comes to communication systems, there's perhaps some form of better decision processes around those.
Thank you. One question I have on GPs and on health, one of the big challenges that has faced Biggleswade, you're right to highlight it, is the GPs, but one of the big promises that has been sort of lingering in the background for a while has been the so-called health hub on the hospital site. And I think it's well known that the challenge is whether that land could be released for a certain amount of time that would justify the kind of investment that would be needed to bring it up to scratch and get the kind of individuals in there running a good quality health hub, whether that's a walk-in centre, whether that's A&E, whatever it looks like. Presumably at some point, this log jam can only be unblocked by the new Secretary of State. Is that the level at which we're potentially talking now to sort out some of the challenges that we have in this part of Bedfordshire?
I'm glad you raised that, Mr. Mayor, because that was another part of the visits that I had. There were 4 locations of GP service locations to be improved across the constituency, which are in a log jam. And they're in a log jam because everyone has an opinion, and lots of different people should have an opinion, but no one's made a decision. So when you go south to Arlesey and the growth in the population in Arlesey, there's massive pressure there. And I went to the Arlesey practice. There's a solution there. The local town council can work on it. CBC can work on it and get a solution. Rightly, as you say here, CBC have plans. It just needs the NHS to work out the lease arrangements. If you go up to Great Barford, there's a building across the road. Everyone knows that's what they want, but it hasn't been signed off. And then in Bidham and Bromham, there was money from a new housing development to support that practice. They provided that in 2016, I think, originally, 2018. All the houses have been built. Everyone's living in the houses, but the shovel hasn't gone to the ground yet to start that construction. So it is about improving the decision process and being confident making the decision process, and for the NHS somehow to realize that it has a performance objective in providing these facilities. And you're right to point out, Biggleswade, and your answer was it is a Secretary of State issue. Yes, that's in the plan to take the Secretary of State.
Excellent, thank you. Are there any last questions? Councillor Strawn.
Yes, just following on the general health situation. Comment has been made in the press over a number of years about the effect of the pensions cap that has affected doctors. Is there anything that the government could do possibly to alleviate that so that doctors would be encouraged to work longer in the NHS without being penalised? That, I think, would be a fundamental help. And I think that it sounds as though there needs to be a bit more joined up thinking, just reading between the lines between the health service and local authorities to make things happen, rather than, I think you described it as Sir Humphreys not talking to each other earlier. Have we got the same problem at a local level? And just very finally, I think one needs to look at possibly greater integration between the NHS and social care, because of the implications of the local authorities and the hospitals playing one off against each other when it tries to get people out and into the home or out of hospitals, because of the way the funding of social care works, and the fact that it is not in the interests of the local authority to support the NHS in doing it, and it's not in the interest of the NHS to support the local authority doing it. Hopefully the government will look at that and improve that particular situation.
Thank you for that. I am on pensions. So I am what is known as a zombie minister. I prefer caretaker, but other adjectives and descriptions are available. So in that role, I've had one outing, potentially my only outing, at the dispatch box. And it was on this very issue of the pensions for GPs. So I can't talk more about it other than say that on that, some very good points were made from actually all parts of the United Kingdom, speakers from Northern Ireland, from Scotland, from Wales, and from different parts of England. And I'm having a follow-up, hopefully, having a follow-up meeting with those MPs to discuss some potential ways of looking at that issue again, because you're absolutely right to raise it as a major issue. On the local, Sir Humphreys, I'll just gently skate over that one. On the social care and local authorities, so this is, no one likes reorganizations in the NHS, but we tend to do it a lot, and we all know, well, I shouldn't say. So with the integrated care partnerships now, with the local authorities coming together with the clinical commissioning groups, this is, and now with additional funding, so that quite controversial tax increase that I had to vote for, I didn't have to, but I chose to vote for. There is the funding that's going to sort of flow from doing the backlogs into the social care. And whilst that flow across over the next 3 years is happening, it is the responsibility of these ICPs to work out the best way to manage those issues. So I wait in hope, perhaps not quite in expectation that the high ambitions we have, but people are getting to the point where we've got this NHS, it needs to fix these problems. We all love the NHS, but in the end, when it's your husband or your wife or your father, your grandparents, and they're not getting the quality of service that they need, and they're not getting the care that they want, you fundamentally have to question, are we doing as well as other countries? What can we learn from other countries to get a better outcome? So I don't like to say that sorting this problem out is in the last chance saloon, but this problem has been around a long time. We have legislated for change on both providing more money and on a long-term care solution. The practitioners now, whether it's local authorities or the NHS, need to make that happen. And if there are parts of the country where it's happening, we should say that's great for those. And Mark will know this because he listened to it earlier today from one of the candidates in leadership. And if there are areas where they are not working, there needs to be proper accountability, and people need to not be shuffled around. They need to be fired.
Richard, thank you ever so much for coming and for sharing those updates. I think the things that you've shared in the last 20 minutes or so are the things that we hear time and time again as councillors. And I know we hear a much more, I know you get a lot of email traffic, I'm sure, from people in Biggleswade. The fact that what you're hearing chimes with what we're hearing and is also our experience on the ground, I think you can be rest assured you are focusing on all of the right priorities for our part of Bedfordshire, and we're grateful for you for coming and sharing all of the work that you're doing on them, and we look forward to hearing more in future. So with that, thank you very much. If you're able to stay for the next part of it, brilliant, that would be great. So please do stay there, that's absolutely fine. Item 5B, for members to receive a presentation from members from Biggleswade FC. So Mark Inskip, Gabe Norfield, Ben Walden. So please do come and take up these microphones, these microphones. And Karen, if we could share the presentation on the screen, please. Yeah, be fine.
Before I start, Mr. Fuller, it's quite interesting. A lot of our presentation today is on about foresight, not hindsight, and it was quite good to listen to you. The railway, there was an Oxford to Cambridge line shut in 1969. So the frustrating thing is there's so many people. I live in Roxton, so the Black Cat is there. That's been changed 3 times, costing tens of millions of public money, and it's still no better. And now that railway line is coming through Wilden, Ravensden, because of Mr. Hodgson, the mayor. And you look back in 1969, the line was there. So when we go through this today, it's foresight, not hindsight. So it's quite good that you've said all that, because when we go through here, we're going to talk about schools, leisure, recreation, and the amount of things that get done, and then later have to be altered or changed, or promises are not met. But
thank you, Mark. I think that's right, and we look forward to this. Karen, if you go to slideshow at the top, slideshow to the right. No, up. No, that's not it. There you go. Right. Can you see the word draw on that row to the right? Yeah, design, transitions, animations, slideshow. We don't need to click on each and every one, just the slideshow one. Slideshow. Is your mouse playing up? Or just press F5. Sorry. It's all right. Mark, can you? Right, from beginning. Thank you. All right, if we could speak, gentlemen, we tend to speak for about 10 minutes, if that's all right, please. So if you want to make us start,
I'll have to speed through, yeah.
That's
okay,
right.
Appreciate everybody taking their time for us to speak today. What we're looking for, I'm speaking for Biggleswade residents who watch, participate, coach in football, both now, but I'm also looking at the next generation of sportsmen and women. Biggleswade's getting bigger, but the leisure side, nothing's been delivered. Emphasis today on people's well-being and mental health. Sports and recreation plays a large part of that. If we could put up the next slide, please. This is the Kings Reach draft plan that was brought up in September 2007, and in red to the left there's areas that was designated for sports, in this case football pitches, and none of those have been delivered. I drove round with the Vice Chairman of Biggleswade last week to look at them, and there's areas there, but no football pitches have been delivered. If you go to the next slide, please. There's one pitch there, there's in the map to the left, in red, highlighted in red, should be a football pitch. Southern Recreation, nothing there. Next slide, please. 4 pitches, That's classed as a central recreation area. Nothing there. Next slide. This one's classed as the Western Recreation Area 5. Nothing there. Next slide. Recreation that's adjacent to Edward Peak School. Again, nothing there. This is the area of real interest for myself because I believe Taylor Wimpey are looking now to build, I think it's 353 houses. They're not delivering anything on the sports side. For me, it's not going to happen, but that area shouldn't be built on, and that should be set aside for leisure and recreation, for football pitches, netball pitches, hockey pitches, etc. There's only so many houses you can build before somebody's got to be held accountable, in my opinion, for leisure side. Last one, please. Again, this one is classed as a Northern Recreation Area, Corridor 8. Nothing is there. Just out of interest, if anybody was to drive through that estate, even if they provided football pitches now, the ground isn't conclusive. It's full of stones, slates. It's not fit for purpose. There's nowhere to park. There's nowhere to change. So even if they decided to mark out football pitches, it's dangerous, it's unsuitable. And if you had a team of 22 people turn up, 15 cars, X amount of adults, there's nowhere to park anyway. So that causes another problem. And the next side of it, with today's society, you can't expect youngsters, male or female, to change outside. There's no changing rooms. So everything there that was promised in 2000 and whenever, hasn't been delivered, but it's not up to today's standards anyway. We go to the next slide, please. I think, well, because of time, I'll miss this out, but this is MP Nigel Huddleston speaking on Sky Sports and ITV, 31st of July, after England won the Euros, stating, he's the sports minister, stating that there's insufficient areas, training facilities for girls to train. Well, there's nowhere in Biggleswade for anybody to train, let alone male and females. As a football club, we have to go to Stopfold, Cranfield, St Neots, Bedford, Baldock. It's ridiculous, really. A town this size, nowhere to train. The FA have highlighted Biggleswade as the worst area in the country for facilities, and it's high on our list. So we'll miss that because it's a minute and a half that it's just Nigel Huddleston explaining that there's 230 million pounds of money available to invest in facilities. And as a council, we should be jumping on that because we should be entitled to something because we've got nothing. If anybody wants to see that slide there, I believe it's available to anybody anyway.
We sometimes struggle a little bit with showing videos on here
Yeah,
anyway.
no.
So
If we go to the next slide, please.
Click again, Karen.
Next slide.
That's all right. Click again.
This is the part of the presentation that really concerns me. And again, with what Mr. Fuller has just said regarding health, this is crazy. 2010, there was a proposal of a health centre, this is off Saxon Drive, of a health centre, football pitches, changing facilities, car parks. If we go to the next slide, because it gives it a bigger view. All that there was put in a planning permission to Central Beds 2010. If we go to the next slide, it was refused on the 6th of January 2011. On the left-hand page, it explains why. I mean, I can't read it there because my eyesight's not that good. Are you able to read that, Grant, by any chance?
I'm on the right-hand side.
Left-hand side, number 1 and number... This is what it was refused on. Before Grant reads it out,
Yeah.
there are now 250 houses on this site. So no health centre, no football pitches, 250 houses, and the football pitches was refused because of the following.
Yeah, so it's scale, location outside the settlement development envelope, unacceptable impact on the character and appearance of this rural area. Then it goes on, application contains insufficient information to show that development would not result in detrimental impact on ecology, habitats, etc.
Right, so yeah, so it's declined for urban rural appearance and habitats, birds and bees, and yet 10 years later, 250 houses is built on that same site. And remember, just to go back, that was a health centre that we applied for, or the town applied for. So that's frustrating. The next slide just shows you a sign of Taylor Wimpey. That's where we're building now on that site there. Just to show you what's been built, which you already probably all know anyway. Next slide, please. What we're finding as a Biggleswade person, football person, in central Bedfordshire, there's houses being built in other towns, Stockfold, Cranfield and Flitwick. Other towns seem to have developers who are more in tune to actually delivering promises, in tune to sitting there looking at what the locals require, need or would like and delivering. So here, Stockfold Football Club, Stockfold's had numerous houses built and Settle Group delivered that stadia there. So there's a stadium, facilities, changing bar, recreation and football pitches behind that bottom right-hand picture there for youth football. And that was delivered in the last 3 years. Next slide, please. Cranfield Pavilion, top right-hand of that photo is a great big estate that's being built by Bloor Homes. Bloor Homes again met with the local councils, worked out what was required, and then where you see what they've developed, that was delivered last year. That's got car parking, full-size 3G pitch, facilities for the FA to deliver programmes, training, etc. Next slide, please. Flitwick Community Football. This project's been delivered through Football Foundation and S106 contributions. They've got over 60 teams. They've got the facilities now to provide for the local youth, both male and female. And again, those three examples are in central Bedfordshire and Biggleswade. I keep hearing the term cash cow. Biggleswade is a cash cow of central Bedfordshire, etc. There's a lot of money being generated in this town. Again, you guys might say different, but it seems to be being spent in quite a lot of parts of Bedfordshire, but not here in Biggleswade. Don't know what your thoughts are on that. The next slide is getting back to being foresight and not hindsight. This is a school built, St Andrew's Lower School on King's Reach, completed in mid-2015 in an area where massive development is happening, with a lot more going to happen if you listen to the rumours of 1,500 houses being built. Within 12 months, it needed an extension. It was designed for 300 children. It's now got over 400, 450, and now porto cabins are being installed. So my argument here is foresight. Why was that built for that size when Biggleswade's going to expand at the rate it is? That's taxpayers' money not happening. Next slide, please. This is Witherington Primary Academy in St Neots. They had a similar problem with Love's Farm, built a school, soon got outnumbered. They're building another big estate and they've created this school that opens shortly. But if you look at the bottom right-hand side, they're providing plenty of sports facilities. Again, children need to be able to play sport. Will it be open to the public? I believe it will be, to generate money for the school. But that's a facility there. When you look at that, that's been built for 630 children. That's been designed on the knowledge that that area is growing quick, not a school that's been put up for today, because what's happened yesterday's happened, what's happening today, but we need to be thinking of tomorrow, because tomorrow will soon be with us. I keep thinking of the next generation. Next slide, please. A little bit of history. The swimming pool, before we came here today and Grant gave us the opportunity, I did some phone calls around, etc. Biggleswade swimming pool, we applied for an Olympic-sized pool at the beginning of this century. It was declined and went to Luton. The swimming pool we've got now is a 25-metre pool. It's oversubscribed. It's not open to the public between 4 and 6 for swimming lessons. There's a backlog. There's a queue for swimming lessons. So if you lived in Biggleswade now and you wanted to learn to swim as a youngster, there's a waiting list. Well, that's For me, that's not good enough. And as a town, 20 something years ago, we had an opportunity with the 2012 Olympics round the corner, but again, it was declined in Biggleswade and went to Luton. Next slide, please. Biggleswade Athletics Club is based in Sandy. That's where the running track is, which again, Sandy's smaller than Biggleswade. Biggleswade Athletics is based in Sandy. That's not good for the town. My wife played for Biggleswade Hockey in the 90s. They changed the ruling on the pitch size, etc., and he had to play on a what they call a 2G, which is a plastic pitch. None in Biggleswade, so they had to move to St Neots. Within 2 years, the club had folded because no one wanted to play hockey for Biggleswade in St Neots. 20-something years later, there is still no training facility, 3G, 2G pitch in Biggleswade. Example, St Neots has 3 full-size bedroom. Bedford has 4, Baldock has 2. It goes on and on and on, and Biggleswade has none. Although I believe there may be one going in Stratton School at some point. Next slide, please. This is where I hand over to Ben, really, because it's all right me talking about this. Can we have some solutions? What we're looking to do is future-proof Biggleswade. Again, I've mentioned before, with foresight, not hindsight. Looking for the future, what can be delivered. Before more and more houses are agreed and planned, surely somebody somewhere in the planning department needs to look at health centres, doctors, leisure, recreation. They can't just keep letting, in my opinion, Taylor Wimpey, Martin Grant Homes, etc., just keep building and building without giving nothing back to the local community. Thank you for my time.
Thank you. Ben.
So next slide, please. So what are we looking at? We're looking at some solutions and what solutions are out there currently. What can we do today to look to the future to support the town with some facilities? So what do we need as a club and what do we need? We need some land. As you can see here, this was drawn up a few years back in conjunction with FWP, with some land that was potentially available. As you can see, it's quite an ambitious project, but as Mark's already said, we need to look to the future. Next slide, please. So again, this is more detailed drawings. Again, for time, I'll go through them a little bit quicker. But as most of you know in the room, we, as I've already mentioned, we looked at a potential site close to King's Reach. Working closely with the councillor Steve Watkins at the time, we came up with what you can see here. It was ambitious, but it was forward-thinking site for facilities for the town. This was also linked closely to schools, as Mark mentioned earlier in the video, which we didn't see. We need to utilise and link up schools to get most out of the facilities. Basically, in the video that was mentioned earlier, that we need to unlock schools and facilities and try and link them together. Next slide, please. So as you can see, as I've said, this was developed by FWP, the drawings, and they have some really good experience in delivering facilities like this and have a proven track record of it. The site was designed for multi-use for football, netball, indoor sports. It was also including a splash park, a regular park for children, and an overflow car park, which could be used for various events, such as car boot sales, summer fetes, etc. This is clearly an ambitious project, but with Biggleswade due to grow, and I've added here in some additional comments what you said, Mr. Fuller, with some data that you've already said about how Biggleswade is growing. We need foresight, not hindsight. The full process was also factored in here, as the project could be delivered over time, so built in phases, as and when the funds and the need would allow. Next slide. Again, this is just some different views of the facility, what we were kind of looking at. Next slide, please. So again, a very small point. You can see there's a dome there. That's what that kind of white green image is in the middle. And the reason I point that out is we as a club, and with our contacts, we've had some loose discussions, I may add, with professional football clubs, one in the county, one very close to this county, that would consider moving their youth sides to a facility like this. Having a dome like this means that youth teams can play at the highest academy level, which is known as a centre of excellence. Again, I'm going to use the word ambitious, but imagine what this could attract the best young talent to the town and what that could do for us all. Next slide, please. Again, that's just another view. Next slide. Okay, next slide. So a solution. So I think it was Councillor Russell that was nodding at me last time when I mentioned a particular developer. Again, through maybe a bit of luck, contacts, whatever else, we had a meeting with Rob Facer at Barnack Estates. And I know you, Grant, warned me last time that being recorded. He's given me permission to talk about. I believe it's in the public eye with what I'm going to mention. Myself and Mark had a meeting with Rob, which some of you will know, as I've pointed out, and has given me permission today. Barnack Estate have done a development just by Sainsbury's and have completed phase 1 of SME commercial units close to Sainsbury's and are currently 6 months away from finishing phase 2. Next slide. Again, for speed, I won't read all of this letter. Again, I think most of you will know in the room, but what this letter as outlined by Rob is that he would commit to support football club in a development if that could be achieved. Obviously, reading between the lines, there's further land that is available for future development, but there's a particular part of that land, around 15 acres, that's floodplain, which I think if we go to the next slide, we should highlight. Yeah, so that is what Rob sent over. You can kind of see there in the middle, the grey area, that's complete. And it's kind of the bottom half of that design where the land is currently not been developed. And it's the bottom right-hand corner there, which Rob was mentioning, that is floodplain and could be a solution. And I use the word solution. In the proposal as well, Barnack have included costs to extend the A1, which was talked about earlier, a footbridge, easy access over the A1, and provided a much needed through road from Caldicott, which again was mentioned earlier. So believe it or not, my job today is not to pitch for Barnack, but they're extremely passionate about supporting the town and have a history of doing this with a football club at our level in Yaxley, building and supporting a fantastic 3G pitch that can be used by all. Next slide, please. And again, just to highlight the area there, as I've mentioned, there is 15 acres of land that could be used for sports facilities in what we believe is a fantastic location that would be visible on the A1. A few other points: as a club, we need to exhaust all opportunities to get revenue into the club, which could include a cafe, a franchise, which would be situated nicely there. Also, a very good suggestion that was made is utilising the car park with electric charging points that could not only benefit the club and the facility, but the town in general, as we know the importance of climate change that we're all facing. Next slide, please. And we will be wrapping up now, just so you know. The Football Foundation, we talked about funding last time. Again, I know it's an ambitious project, but there is funding out there. There's potentially 750,000 plus from the Football Foundation, but we can't tap into that funding until we get land. There's no point putting any of this forward to them until we have land. As we pointed out earlier, the Premier League, there seems to be an awful lot of money out there. Sport England as well, if we utilise the facility for different sports, netball, hockey, etc., we could tap into that potentially. S106 money, which Mark has already mentioned. The Beds FA, they've committed to support the club as well, because they are really in the relegation zone, using football terms in terms of facilities. And Alan Young there, who's the CEO and a professional football referee, is very, very supportive of what we're trying to do. And it's pretty much top on his agenda what he needs to do in terms of football facilities and training facilities. And as I've already said, Barnack Estates, they would look to support as a solution, as we've already looked at. And finally, private investment. There is interest with private investment. We're not naive enough to think that it's going to be funded and gifted to us. but there is interest depending on the facility and how it would be laid out, whether it be daytime use, bar facilities. We've looked at sports colleges as well to get education into the facility. That could attract some private investment as well. And, you know, personally from myself, Dave, my business partner next to me, and Mark, myself and Dave are business partners, and we're moving our business to one of these big shiny new units just round the corner. It would be great for us, for our business as the club's main sponsors, not only to carry on supporting the club, but having our business in Bedfordshire, tipping over from Hertfordshire, I may add, and supporting the football club.
Ben,
Thank you.
Ben, Mark, thank you both ever so much. Comments, councillors? We can take a few in one go to keep it moving. Councillor Strawn.
Yes, very interesting. Very good ideas. I gather you need 15 acres of land for the project that you're thinking of roughly. Is that right? What land do you need? Because the Barnock Estate is not in the parish of Biggleswade, and we might quite like it to have it in Biggleswade if it was feasible. So what area of land? And also one sport you didn't seem to mention, I don't recollect hearing it was cricket, because again, one would like to see all the sports actually given more facilities as the town grows.
Yeah. I'll answer first before Mark. I think as we shown in the 3D drawings there, that we just need the land. So if the land is there, we're not just sat here as a football club saying that we want this and that. You know, we have factored in everything through the years that we've been going through these discussions of everything from netball, cricket, everything. Why not have a central hub that hopefully ticks all the boxes that the town wants? So and that can be delivered in phases as well, you know. So absolutely, we want a sports facility, not just football club.
Just the acreage is really what I'm looking at, because obviously.
Sorry, Councillor Strawn, we're not making this conversational. Sorry, there are other councillors that want to come in.
Can I just answer on the cricket? If you look at the Kingsreach drawings, there is an area set aside for cricket on a roundabout owned by Martin Grant Homes, who have made it difficult for us to deal with because we're interested in that plot of land. But I know, speaking to them, they're going to be looking to build on that. They've made it so difficult. And again, I haven't got the facts and figures you guys may well have. That land should have been handed back to the council as part of some sort of deal back in 2000 and whenever. So again, you've got builders, developers, probably the wrong terminology, basically doing what they like in your town, because that should be a cricket pitch now. It's actually all over the drawings, Councillor Strachan.
Thank you. Further comments? I think Councillor Russell.
Can I just say, do you have an acreage? Because it would be very helpful for us when we're looking at this in the future. Do you have any idea of the actual amount of land that plan was for?
Mark?
If I'm honest, no. We base, when you look at the private owned land by Biggleswade Town, that's 8 acres. And that would be something that you'd be looking at to, again, we'd be looking to create something that can be built on. We're not silly enough that that's going to land and be done now. It's something to be future proof. So as and when Biggleswade gets bigger, 106 money is available, the need for more sports, we can add to it. I'm concerned that you build something small that then in 5, 10, 20 years time is too small, but you're probably looking at around 10 acres. Any more than that would be brilliant, but we're realistic.
And I believe there's 15 on that particular example with Barnock, to give you an idea.
Thank you. Any last comments from councillors? I think this has been quite eye-opening for a number of colleagues. One of the challenges I know we face is that Kingsreach first came forward for planning in 2005. It was granted in 2011. All of the plans that were then based on what infrastructure was needed, even they haven't been delivered. And since then, we've had more development on top of that. So the scale of the deficit now is, I think, has been very well articulated by this presentation. We have an agenda item coming up where we're going to be talking about a parcel of land, and the town council is going to be asked for its view on it. And we know that there are further conversations, particularly around the 353 houses that Taylor Wimpey are interested in building, plus then potential further discussions about 1,500 houses to the east of Biggleswade in future. But I think you've given us a lot to think about here and a lot to reflect on. And when the neighbourhood plan, which is another item on this agenda, comes forward where we make comments about leisure, we need to make sure that we're making those arguments as firmly as we can when the opportunities come forward to try to push for leisure facilities, because it's clearly now a real priority for the town.
Is it all right if Dave has 2 minutes?
Yeah, do you want to speak very briefly, Dave? I was keen to bring this to a close by about 8 o'clock, if that's all right.
I just being born in Biggleswade, I was born in Dales Lane. A little bit of history. My grandfather owned the fish and chip shop in Hitchin Street, and my father owned the fish and chip shop in Sun Street for many, many years. But I just, as a guy of 62 years of age, when I was born, there was Biggleswade Town used to play down Fairfield Road, Biggleswade United did, and there was a facility at Stratton Way. And 62 years later, there's a private facility for Biggleswade Town, there's Biggleswade United and there's Stratton Way. And the only thing that I've seen added in this town in 62 years is a very small area in Eagle Farm Road and a facility off of Windermere Drive that's not fit for purpose in 62 years. I've lived in the town the whole of that time. So I just wanted to tell you my 62 years in town of what's happened, which is not much.
Thank you, Mr. Northfield. Okay. Yes, very briefly, please, Jeremy. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm Jeremy. I'm chair of Biggleswade FC, and I know time is short, and I don't want to just go over ground that's been made in this excellent presentation. But I just have a question for everybody here. Is based on the fact that we have an ethos, we're more than a football club. The FA can't be represented tonight. They talk about common unity. They talk about asset-based community development, about putting things back to the community. You have a jewel here in Biggleswade FC. I'm the only person with a tie on this very hot evening because I'm proud, because our badge was designed by a local school child. But in those schools, we have a values cut to support, education, to support values and youth development. We put things back to the community. You have a jewel here. It's about putting back to the community. So my question to everybody here, based on this presentation, is what are we going to do and when to change this, to change this oil tanker that's been on this sad course for the town? Mm-hmm. We need something now that you can have your legacy to set the town on a different direction with this jewel that's already putting back things. Our ethos is localism, community-based. We have an incredible community input, even though we're at the moment 7 miles outside of the town. There's a jewel here already doing fantastic things, what it could do with its own facility. And as a professional geographer, something just to have to think about is you don't want this town further fragmented between north and south and east and west. People living in King's Reach who don't even know there's a Biggleswade town centre. Our development for the club, but also spearheading for wider development, can help to rebalance the town and bring the town together, east and west and community. So I just want to leave you with a question based on the excellent presentation of my colleagues is, what are we going to do and when to make a difference? Because there's something very special that belongs to all of us here. It's just waiting to really exercise its full potential.
Last word, Councillor Russell.
I think certainly I'm sitting here somewhat embarrassed, having been a councillor for over 20 years. There hasn't been much reaction from colleagues around the table to your presentation, and I think that's because we know that every word you're saying is right, and we're at a loss to know what else we can do, where we have lobbied a lot in the past. And the mayor's mentioned the neighbourhood plan. We actually wanted to put a policy in the neighbourhood plan specifically about football, and it was decided by the examiner that it shouldn't be that specific. But we have got under sports and recreation that we require suitable locations for sports pitches and facilities. And in the interpretation, we put, this includes the provision of football facilities for which there is a particular need. Now, that doesn't sound much in the context of the neighbourhood plan, but if colleagues approve this tonight, this will go to referendum in the town. And if the plan is approved by the electorate, it becomes planning policy. And those people who deal with the plans for our town at other levels will have to take note of it. And I think you can be assured that we will be pushing all that we can, but we are not the planning authority. We do not negotiate Section 106. All we can do is to make it very clear formally, as we have here, what's required. And certainly if there's anything that we come across or that we can do, we will. But I just sit here feeling helpless.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Councillor Bond, I'm going to bring this to a close.
I understand.
30 seconds.
I've really enjoyed listening to your presentation, and actually said, like Councillor Russell said, it's quite embarrassing that what hasn't happened. But I will do my best to work with you to see what influence we can do to try and bring this forward. Neighbour plan is a policy which will give us some more than planning guidance. It's actually important when planning applications come to central beds to have documents like this. This is more than a stepping stone. It's a significant document and needs to be supported by Biggleswade because it gives us the tools to be able to get applications and be able to get the football sorted. We would like to make the football more prominent. We haven't given up. And really, well, I was almost moved by listening to your presentation. And yes, work's to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. An excellent presentation. And thank you ever so much for taking the time to put that together. It was very well researched as well, because a lot of us weren't around. Well, I was around, but I was a little younger. Can't really remember 2005 too well. But I was riding my bike over those fields that are now not the football pitches that they should have been. But it's interesting because over 20 years, commitments were made and not delivered on, and we need to make sure that they are now, and that's been heard loud and clear. Thank you ever so much. There's no need to stay for the rest of our meeting, so you are excused if you wish to go. But thank you ever so much, and we look forward to working with you all in future. Item 6, members' questions. Do any members have any questions? Councillor Knight.
I have 3. Firstly, could those slides from that presentation be shared with us, please? Can you email these slides?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I'll start with the easy question. Would it be possible, Mr. Clark, to get an update on the procurement of CCTV, please?
Procurement of CCTV, Karim? Do you want to just sit there?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So yes, after what would appear to be a very long time indeed, I'm delighted to say that we have this week emailed our supplier with a procurement order to procure the equipment which council resolved upon, and hence begin the installation. The installation is expected to take some time, a number of months, but not too many months, and the supply will come back to us, to officers, once suppliers have notified the specific timelines for the kits to be procured, installed, and also importantly, the fibre connection. I'd just like to take this opportunity just to thank both members and officers who have worked together on this project to bring it to this point as such, and obviously we'll continue to monitor it and make sure it's all working brilliantly.
Peter?
I'm conscious that we're having a conversation in open session, so I'm going to try and be a little bit grey in my response. A significant proportion of the monies that we require to enable all of this to happen are making progress. We are making progress with Central Beds in discussing those options and making them real. There still remains a sum of money that we need to finalise associated with that.
Thank you. Very sorry, quickly. Yes, please.
Thanks indeed. And obviously, we'll come back to council with a further update just as soon as we've nailed down all those nuances.
Thank you. Could you just turn that microphone off next to you, please, Karim? Thanks. Councillor Knight.
Thank you. Now my longer question, apologies to this one. So there was a fairground promoted by the Town Council on social media between the 18th and the 21st of August. This was on Town Council land but I note I don't think it came to council for consideration. When it was promoted, several residents in neighbouring properties contacted me and complained when they saw the posters and the adverts. They complained they weren't consulted, and they had previously been given assurances by officers who were no longer with the council they would be consulted before there were any similar events on that site. And then I note the event was subsequently cancelled after one day. So I have a number of questions. I support the use of council land for events that benefit the community, but they must be properly organised. So firstly, why wasn't this brought to council for consideration? What exactly went wrong? And I guess most importantly, what can we learn from this? What is the clerk proposing to do to ensure the council learns from this incident, please?
If I might answer. So I think they're all very fair questions, but I think they're all captured in your final one, Councillor Knight, which is about what is there to learn. So having spoken to Karim and the play shaping manager on Friday, we have said that a lessons learned needs to be done to make sure that we know what went wrong here. If I may say from the chair, these sort of decisions would normally come to council. So I think that's something that will be captured in it. So I don't want to preempt what a lessons learned might find. So that I think that will answer your question in the fullness of time. We don't need to dwell too much on it tonight. Peter, do you want to speak very briefly?
I mean, I'd like to suggest that a more detailed response is given to Councillor Knight by Karim outside of this discussion, and Karim is prepared to do that and ready prepared to do that.
Perfect. Thank you. Any further members' questions? No. Okay, meetings and item 7, minutes and recommendations of meetings. The minutes of the Town Council meeting held on the 9th of August. I'm going through these for accuracy first of all. So we're on page 8 of our packs for accuracy. Any issues on page 8? Page 9, page 10, page 11, page 12, page 13, page 14, page 15. No, so we're comfortable that these are a true and accurate record. Is someone okay to move that, please? Thank you. Matters arising, item 8. So same set of minutes we're going through for matters arising. So I'm on page 8. Any matters arising on page 8? Matters arising on page 9, page 10, page 11, page 12, page 13, page 14, page 15. Councillor Russell.
Can I just ask why the minutes are set out like this, so that we have a page with just a few lines on it and another page with just half? I mean, we're using so much paper. Can it not be set out in a different way, please? And I'd just like to say that personally, I don't find the new way of numbering the minutes particularly useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. I think that's noted. I think staff have heard that. Okay, anything else on page 15? No, so I will move on. Item 9, the accounts. We have no accounts to consider this month. Item 10, items for consideration, Biggleswade Neighbourhood Plan referendum version. For members to receive and consider the final version of the Biggleswade Neighbourhood Plan. The referendum is set to be held on Thursday, the 6th of October. Councillor Russell. With your microphone, please. Thank you.
I have just lost my notes. Wait a minute. Okay, colleagues, the neighbourhood plan before council today is the final version, the referendum version of the plan. This all started back in June 2018 when the strategy group first met. We've been through a lot. The public were consulted 4 times, and then finally council approved a version of the plan to be submitted to CBC. CBC carried out further consultation. They then submitted the plan to an examiner, a planning inspector. We had some conversations about what the examiner had said and how the plan needed to be adjusted, and adjustments were agreed. And we've now got the final version in front of us. As the Mayor has said, we're being asked as council to approve this version to go to referendum on the 6th of October. And if the electorate approve, then the neighbourhood plan will become formal planning policy, and the development in Biggleswade will have to take account of the plan. Now, the only notable change that the examiner required was to omit the strategic green spaces, which are akin to the important countryside gaps in the local plan. These were proposed to prevent coalescence with surrounding communities, particularly Langford and Sandy. The examiner felt that the allocation of these gaps should be within the local plan rather than the neighbourhood plan. Central Bedfordshire Council are starting a review of the local plan. They're looking internally at the moment at which aspects of the plan will need to be revised and reviewed. But they have told us that we need more evidence of the need for important countryside gaps north and south of Biggleswade. So that's something we'll have to work on. If we can't get the changes we want in the local plan, then an alternative is to review the neighbourhood plan and once it's in place. We need to get the plan in place. We know that we've got important applications coming forward in the near future. We've heard about Taylor Wimpey's 350 houses, phase 4 of King's Reach. We know that we have Hallam's application, which has been in place for a long while now and not being determined. So we know we may still have problems there. And we know, again, Land East was mentioned tonight in the context of the football pitches. We don't know where we're going with that. The first outline planning application is timed out, and it's not yet clear whether a second application, which was provisionally approved, will fail or not. There are problems with the section 106. So we do need to have the plan in place to protect the town's interests as much as possible. I'd just like to outline some key points from the plan for the record. Designating local green spaces, 15 small green spaces in the town which are important to local people, and designating them means they can't be built on. There are policies in the plan to protect Biggleswade Common and the Green Wheel. We're trying to encourage business in the town centre with residential use only at first floor and above, not on ground floor level. We're trying to mitigate the impact of large commercial development on residential properties, including ensuring landscaping appropriately and sufficient parking. We're trying to ensure that sustainable design complements the character of the town. We're trying to protect the conservation area in the town and our important scheduled monuments, and to encourage sensitive use of heritage buildings. We're trying to provide safe environments, including for cycling, walking and mobility scooters, and to ensure proper access for service vehicles and emergency vehicles where there's likely to be on-street parking. And we know we've had lots of problems with that in more recent developments in Biggleswade. And very relevant to tonight, we're trying to encourage the development of sports and recreation facilities and the provision of land for allotments. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the strategy group, both members and officers, for all the work that's been put in over the last 4+ years with fortnightly meetings, which created quite a lot of administration. And the strategy group is happy to be recommending the plan to council for approval tonight. So can I now please ask council to approve the neighbourhood plan to go forward to referendum?
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Is there a seconder for that proposal? Yes, there are a few. Good. Comments? Councillor Strawn.
I think it's just essential that we get this through for a number of reasons which have been elucidated tonight. Whilst I'm disappointed at the examiner's comments and what's been removed, it's essential for the future of this town that we actually get this through the referendum. It will give legal standing to the plan, and although it may not be perfect, and nothing ever is in this life, it's absolutely essential that we get a positive vote. And I think that we as a council should be looking to continue to improve the plan, either by making sure the local plan is up to scratch for the town, or by reviewing and updating this plan on a regular basis. But it's absolutely essential we go through with it. We've got a lot of development proposed, and this is about the only way that we as a town council can make sure that we've got absolute influence on what goes, by having actually a legally binding document.
Thank you, Councillor Strawn. Further comments? No, well, if I may say from the chair, I think this council can be very proud of the work that's taken place here. I remember I just joined the council when we first floated the idea of a neighbourhood plan, knowing that it was going to be quite a journey. I don't think any of us predicted a global pandemic in the middle of it, which I know has been very difficult to keep things on track. But for a town as complex as Biggleswade, with the challenges which we face, whether that's residential development, industrial development, or the sort of challenges which we've heard tonight from the MP and from Biggleswade FC, this plan gives us clearly the best fighting chance we can possibly have to have the town's voice heard, not just informally in discussions with senior councillors, but actually legally as well. So I think we should minute our thanks to the strategy group, to the administrative staff of the town council, but also particularly to Councillor Russell, who has seen this through some literally from day one. So I think hopefully we could minute that as well. We have a proposal. Are there any last comments? All those in favour of the neighbourhood plan going to referendum, please show. That is unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody. Item 10B, lawful development certification existing. So this is the Laurels on Langford Road near Biggleswade Town Football Club. Do we have any comments on this? Councillor Strawn.
Yes, I'm rather concerned that this appears, if I've understood the paperwork correctly, that a building has been built and has been up there for such a long time that it's now beyond the normal planning process. I'd like to know what Central Bedfordshire Council's planning officers are actually doing to allow something to be built that apparently shouldn't have been built, so that we're in this situation where there's now a lawful development certificate. I may have missed the point from the application, but it does seem to me rather peculiar.
Thank you. Councillor Bond.
I wouldn't normally make a comment on a planning application, but in this one I will. The more I looked into it, the more I was actually unhappy about it. The council, I think it was Mid-Beds at the time, rejected the planning application. What this was for a day room for a caravan, which is what they got planned, and it went to appeal, and they won the appeal, so they actually had permission to build this day room. And if you look at the documents involved, what they actually built was a far bigger building than they actually had planning permission for. And clearly, this has not been picked up or enforced. So what we're now faced with after X number of years of occupation is they're now trying to, this is a lawful certificate trying to make what was done without permission legal. And personally, I don't really approve of it. And I will uncharacteristically say that here, which I don't normally. It goes against the principle of planning. So when I let other colleagues make their point, what they think about it, I think, you know, if buildings are built without planning permission and not enforced, and then after X number of years of occupation, it's very difficult to do much about them. And this is the situation what we're in.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Further comments? Councillor Russell.
I'd just like to say that this is, of course, in the area where we're trying to prevent coalescence. It's south of the A1 towards Langford. We had the planning application for the Department for Transport and Siemens, didn't we? Just south of Cow Close. We've now got this. We know that the agents for Cow Close have said that they want to build on that land, and it's okay because they'll put plenty of landscaping in. It's not just that that's the issue. And we know what we responded to the railway planning application. But this is why it's so frustrating, as Councillor Strawn said, that the examiner didn't think that we should be doing that it was a Central Beds thing that needs to be done. And I think we do need to push really hard, because this is the kind of creeping development that will bring about coalescence.
I think we're looking for a proposal then. Councillor Strawn.
Yes, if I may put a formal proposal, because I don't think we've actually had one, that we write to Central Bedfordshire Council expressing our concern that this situation has arisen where something that appears to have been built without permission has been allowed to remain and not been enforced within the appropriate time period, which has resulted in this application being presented.
Could you stress in that perhaps that it's outside the envelope of the town and in an area which is not rife for development?
And that it is interfering effectively between the town of Biggleswade and the village of Langford.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Foster. Further comments? Councillor North.
Just a question really, should we add to it to say that we would recommend that Central Beds enforce planning enforcement get involved and order that the building should be demolished?
It's possibly too late, which is why this is coming to us, I suspect. I don't know whether Councillor Strawn wishes to add that to his proposal. I guess he could.
I would love to add it, but I don't think it's possible. I think, and I didn't want to include that in my proposal. I think it's a fait accompli, probably in practical terms. But I'm not happy about it. Hence the word, what I proposed in roughly the terms I did without actually raising that point, because I don't think we're in a position to reject it. I was hoping that we'd find some reason to find that it wasn't the appropriate period of time, but the lawful development certificates, I think, of period has reduced. I think it used to be a 10-year period, but I think it's obviously gone down to 4 years on this. So I'm not sure that we've got anything we can actually object to against the lawful development certificate, but I think we ought to make the point to Central Bedfordshire Council that we're unhappy.
Thank you. Councillor Knight.
So I just wonder if I'm missing something here. So requests for certificates of lawful development do not normally come to town council. They're normally dealt with by the planning authority. So why has this come to town council for consideration? Does that mean there is potential to object in a way that we wouldn't normally? I just wondered if the clerk knew.
Peter?
I looked for Karim for some advice. I didn't frame this agenda. Obviously, I've been away on leave. Where did this originate from?
Well, it will have just come from Central Beds Council, right?
Was a communication.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, Councillor Strawn, do you want to summarise your proposal?
No, sorry, just for a point of information, I think that the situation is that it would probably be appropriate if we had a valid objection, such as we could dispute the timescale or something like that, we could put forward other evidence that says that the lawful development certificate is inappropriate, but on the basis of what I saw on the application, I think the timescale has gone and that we aren't in a situation that we could got contrary evidence to dispute it.
Councillor Bond.
However we feel about it, for the sake of actually, I tried to speak to the case officer, but she's actually on leave, so I couldn't actually get any guidance on this or get more information about it. I think the fact is, even if we think that we're unable to oppose it, I think as a council we should probably say we oppose it and just put the ball back into Central Beds Court, rather than actually agreeing with it.
Okay. Councillor Strawn, do you want to summarise your proposal?
The basic proposal is that we write to Central Beds Council expressing concern that this situation has arisen and that it should have been enforced. And I'd be happy to add, if the seconder is, and that we do oppose this lawful development certificate.
Yes, in part because of its location, but also the way it's come about. Are you happy with that, Councillor Foster? Okay. Any last comments? All those in favour of writing to Central Beds in the way Councillor Strawn's outlined? That's carried, thank you. Item 10C, EIA, scoping opinion, Symmetry Park. So this is Biggleswade Phase 3, land up on Stratton Industrial Park. I think we are being asked for comments in this sort of expansion in industrial development. Comments, please. Councillor Russell.
Well, I haven't had a lot of time to look at the documents, but from what I've seen, some of the Central Beds officers are not too sure about what's being proposed. One of the potential problems is air quality with all the extra traffic movement. We know there's a problem in Sandy, and the environmental officers think it might add to the air pollution in Sandy with the extra vehicles. And I think that's something that's going to happen anyway. We've heard from Mr. Fuller about what might happen with the A1. The other issue that the officers are raising, which I think we should also raise, is rights of way and the impact on the rights of way network and suitable landscaping, because if you're using those rights of way, it's not very nice if you're just going through some sort of industrial estate. And I think we need to be aware of the fact that this is effectively an extension to Stratton Business Park. There is more and more traffic that's going to be going to the A1 South. We already know the difficulties with access to the A1 South at peak times. And these buildings appear to be more warehouses, so there's going to be an awful lot of extra traffic. So I think we need to make a comment about that. I would also be interested to know what other options these developers may have on land there, because it was very obvious from the examination in public that the land to the east of the A1 was going to come forward with the revision of the local plan if there's a call for sites. And this is why I was speaking a lot about the southern approach to Biggleswade and the need for landscaping, because if we're not careful, the southern approach for Biggleswade is just going to be through warehouses, which is not very pleasant. So I think we need to make the comment about the development to the east. And this goes a bit further to the west of what's already there. So it's beginning to creep towards the A1. And I think the other thing that we should be thinking about, particularly after tonight, is to start to question what is going to be in the Section 106 agreement. So I've already said from the neighbourhood plan, we want allotment land, we want football facilities. Where's this coming from? And if there are options on land other than where these 4 new warehouses are going to be, is it possible to have something adjacent to this? For a football facility, it's probably okay. It might even be okay for allotments, but we need to make the points to Central Beds as soon as we can, I think, on what we'd like to see in Section 106 agreements now that these developments are coming forward, because what this really scoping opinion is a preliminary to the planning application.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Russell. So am I right in thinking that this is a proposal to write back to Central Beds with comments around reiterating issues potentially for air quality, rights of way, and would like to see better landscaping, or certainly respectful landscaping. Also raising comments about added pressure to the A1 South roundabout, which doesn't seem to be changing, plus then further comments on options of land to the east. And if this does come forward, them finding a way to provide through Section 106, plus the land that they have available potentially for football and allotments. Is that a fair, good quality football facilities and allotments? Is that a fair summary of what you're suggesting? Thank you. Yeah. Is there a seconder for that proposal then? Councillor Strawn, is that a second?
I'm happy to second that.
Okay,
And I
just to
think-
speak.
Yes, please.
Yeah, go on.
I just think we've heard about foresight being put forward earlier, and I think it's essential that when we do write, if I may say, that we actually emphasise the fact that further development down there must be providing the Section 106 money and the facilities for more than just pure warehousing, industrial work, in other words, the allotments, the footballs and sporting facilities, because there is a lot of land to the south of Biggleswade at the moment that I think is probably in the hands of Central Bedfordshire Council, that could provide a lot of the land and the provisions that we've just heard are so desperately needed for this town, even if it doesn't come out of the residential development areas. If they are going to develop there, which we've got concerns over, we want to make sure that there are facilities for the people of the town, and indeed the people who will be working in all these new premises, so that there are leisure facilities available.
Thank you. Councillor Russell.
It's just occurred to me that Central Beds took to themselves special planning powers for Stratton Business Park. So in a way, I'm quite surprised we've got the opportunity to comment on this. So I think we should make as strong a comment as we can on it.
Yeah, and also almost thank them for the opportunity to do so, do I say. No, okay, that's fine. No, but genuinely, I think we are grateful for the opportunity to do this, because there have been benefits to Central Beds taking on some of those planning powers, because it's meant that people have wanted to invest in Biggleswade, which have created jobs, which have been to the benefit of our residents. So, but there's a balance here, and I think we are genuinely grateful for this opportunity. Further comments, anybody? No, so we have a proposal to provide comments to Central Bedfordshire Council in the way which is outlined. So there's some comments around air quality which have been raised by officers, further comments around rights of way and the landscaping that would be required in order to protect them, further comments around potential pressure on the A1 South roundabout, which we know needs sorting, but then also crucially, comments around options on land to the east of Biggleswade, perhaps adjacent to this site, whether that's Spring Farm or otherwise, and making sure that there is not just Section 106 money available for leisure and potentially allotments, but actually providing land in order to deliver those. Okay, all those in favour of writing to Central Bedfordshire making those comments? Thank you very much, that's unanimous. If and when this is being minuted, if you want to email this to myself and Councillor Russell, we'll just check the wording before it goes, because I appreciate it's not a straightforward proposal.
Could we note,
yes,
Chairman, that Councillor Bond didn't vote? I think we note that Councillor Bond didn't vote.
Oh, you didn't vote? Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Item 11, planning applications. 11A, 7 and 8 Eldon Way, raising the roof height by 250 millimetres to install overclad insulation. Any comments? Noted. Yeah.
Objections.
No objection subject to neighbours. Okay. 11B, Unit E, A1 Retail Park, London Road, Biggleswade, variation of condition for planning permission to allow up to 5% of the ground floor area of one of the units on the retail park being able to be used for more than 5% to be used for food. Councillor Ramsey.
I noticed that they're talking about a pharmacy, and I understand that those are within the gift of the NHS, because Boots, the large Boots, was not allowed to have their pharmacy because we already had Jardines up in that area as a pharmacy, and we have them on the A1 in Sainsbury's. So I'm intrigued to know how they're going to get planning permission or be able to run a pharmacy. I don't think they'd be able perhaps to do that.
Is this a pharmacy? I don't think it is.
Sale of food and to allow a pharmacy. 1, 2, 4.
Oh, okay, yes, sorry. Oh, and to allow a pharmacy to, oh, thank you, yes, I beg your pardon, I missed that, Councillor Ramsey, that's a good point. Councillor Foster's waving at me. Did you want to comment, Councillor Foster, as well, Councillor, as well?
I guess I may have misread it as well. The way I understood it to be was that that was the original conditions, and that the variation was to increase the capacity for food. So I didn't interpret it that they were looking to have a pharmacy, but I'm happy to be corrected.
Okay, Councillor Strawn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm also slightly confused by what the application is, because when I looked at it online, I think I saw somewhere referencing 30% for food. I may have misread that, but it's not very clear, I don't think, in terms of what they're doing, because what they're looking at varying is this planning permission related to any number of units on the site, which have got the same condition. And I think it's just for this particular unit. And I saw somewhere reference to 30%. I'm rather confused by this and concerned by this, because originally there was meant to be, I think, literally no food up there because of the impact it would have on the town centre. So yes. I do have concerns over this. And I also note that it looks as though it's pound land that are going up there, which again has potential implications for the town centre. So correct. I'm rather concerned about this and the lack of clarity in the explanation.
Thank you. Councillor Frank Foster.
I'd like to echo what Councillor Strawn has said. It rather seems to me that if Poundham get planning permission up there, it's going to be a death knell for Poundham in the town, which is the worst thing. It's a major unit in our town, and we wouldn't want Poundham to go up there. And I don't think we should be doing anything to encourage that to happen.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Councillor Russell.
I don't think we've got a proposal yet. I would like to propose that we oppose this variation of condition. Councillor Strawn is quite right. The condition was imposed to try to protect our town centre. We've already had one variation because of, I won't mention the name, but they're such a large company, they got their own way. But I don't think we want more food units up there. We've already got a supermarket the other side of the road, and it's becoming more and more of a challenge for the town centre. So I think we should object to this variation.
Yes.
I think that's all we need to say, and that the original condition should apply.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that proposal? Yes, there's quite a few. I actually do note in the cover letter provided by the applicant that they say it won't have any impact on the vitality or viability of any businesses in the town centre, but believe that when I see it. In fact, I hope I don't get to see it. Are there any further comments? No. So the proposal is that we object to this variation of condition, and that the original standards should be upheld. They were in place really to protect the town centre, and this goes against that. Councillor Foster.
Can we say strongly object?
Are you comfortable strongly objecting, Councillor Russell? I think we are. Not to put words into anybody's mouth. So all those in favour of strongly objecting in the way which is has been outlined, that is carried. Thank you. Item C, 57 Laburnum Road, two-storey rear and side extension. Any comments, please? Subject to neighbours? Okay. D, 3 Dells Lane, carport width to be extended from the width of the existing carport to the right-hand side of the driveway, existing carport to remain, and to allow side-by-side parking of vehicles. Any comments on this? Subject to neighbours? 19A High Street, extraction system for pizza restaurant in building formerly a shop. Councillor Knight.
Thank you. I have quite a bit on this one. So the application then is the site we have talked about before, the former TUI travel agent and next to the former Timpsons. And as the Mayor mentioned, it's an extraction system for a pizza restaurant. That's the applicant's wording, which they're claiming is planning class of use E. And the previous or former TUI was also class E as a shop. So class E is for restaurants, or can be for restaurants, where the sale of food and drink is for consumption mostly on the premises. So I think that's really important. And if you want to operate something like a takeaway, hypothetically, so hot food takeaway where consumption is mainly away from the location of purchase, class E is not appropriate. You need sui generis instead. So a change of use would be required should they wish to predominantly operate as a takeaway. So I thought I'd have a look on the website, on the signage that's outside the newly refurbished premises, Caprino's Pizzas Limited. And on their website, it clearly says it's a young, successful UK pizza delivery and takeaway chain. No mention at all of the word restaurant. Which is a bit concerning. So I suggest, given the size and space within the premises for tables, perhaps there's space for maybe 4 tables, which I don't think is commercially viable, and the content of the website, I think the application is misleading, suggesting that they're going to operate as a restaurant with Class E. So, of course, there's also the matter of the extraction to consider. So I would like to propose that we object to the installation of the extraction facilities on grounds of noise and visual impact. So the visual impact is because this is within the conservation area. The noise reports use some wonderful jargon, nearest noise sensitive receptor. Apparently, the nearest noise sensitive receptor is the residential property upstairs, which is only 3 meters away from the outlet of the flue. And it's proposed that the extraction facilities will operate from 11 in the morning till 11 at night, Monday to Sunday, so 7 days a week, which I think is pretty disruptive. And now the noise levels that are forecast are relatively low, and the noise assessment tries to argue that it's below the ambient noise level. However, I note that's when the system is new. And I think anyone who has any experience of anything mechanical, they tend to get a lot noisier quite quickly with age. So we can expect it to get quite noisy and rattly. So I think we need to object on those grounds, but I think we also need to write to explain that we believe they will be operating mostly as a takeaway based on the size and the contents of their website, and therefore the operator does need to apply for a change of use to sui generis before they commence trading. And then finally, if any planning application is granted, I'm very concerned about the impact on the high street and enforcement of the no waiting, no parking restrictions outside. So I think if planning is granted, I think we need to ask that there be enforcement of the planning restrictions on the high street whenever the premise is open, which is from 11 a.m. till 11 p.m. 7 days a week, please. And then finally, can I ask one of the Central Beds councillors present to call this application into the Development Management Committee, please?
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that proposal? Yes, there are. Comments? Councillor Foster, you're indicating.
Yeah, I think Councillor Knight has pretty much elucidated my comments. So I have no real additional comments to make. I think you've said it very well, other than to say I'm quite happy to call it in.
Comments? Councillor Strawn?
A question of Councillor Knight. I'm afraid I haven't looked at this in much detail as he has, particularly with what height is the extraction fan leaving the building at, and does it go above roof height, or does
Councillor
it
Knight?
From memory, I think it does, but I'll double check if there are any other comments while you're talking.
I'm just concerned that if it sounded as though from what Councillor Knight said that it was within a few feet of the residential property, and I was just wondering what level it went out, because if it came out at the ground level, or the bottom of the first floor level, it would be going up past the residential property.
Yeah, so it does absolutely go past the residential property, and yeah, the outlet is above the roof line.
Thank you. Further comments? Councillor Ramsey?
Would Councillor Knight mind if I said that I think that the parking and the problems with the high street should go as part of the objection, and not just say if it gets passed, can we have that enforced? I'd like to have the disruption of the high street.
Yeah, I mean, I know this is an application for the extraction, not for a change of use, but I accept your comment.
Yeah. Okay. I think we know where we're going with this then. Councillor Knight, I won't ask you to repeat your proposal. I'm sure you'll provide some appropriate wording for our staff to make sure it's passed on to Central Beds, and Councillor Foster said he'll call this in as well. So all those in favour of objecting to this planning application based on Councillor Knight's comments, so that is carried. Thank you. F, Hinder Hyde, Eagle Farm Road, 2-storey rear extension, single-storey side extension and alterations to garage, including new pitched roof. Comments? Subject to neighbours? Okay, thank you. I'm seeing nods. G, 23 Ival Gardens, works to trees, but probably taking some branches off or something. Comments? Noted. Noted. Okay. Sorry, that was very dismissive of me. I hope the tree's all right. 12A, planning application outcomes. A report of planning application outcomes as of 17th of August. Any comments? I have a comment. 17th of August is 2 days before the 19th of August. And the 19th of August 2021 was the day that the consultation period ended for land north of Biggleswade. So we are over a year since the last consultation ended, and it's still not been determined. Okay, little factoid for you there. A birthday cake. Oh, we should. I hope there's another anniversary where I can celebrate it being rejected. Councillor Strawn?
Just on the matter of long outstanding planning applications, does anyone know what's happening with regard to the land at the east? Because it's just still awaiting decision.
Planning permission has lapsed, so they will need to reapply. Councillor Russell?
Certainly the first outline application has lapsed. My understanding, unless anybody's going to correct me, is that the second planning permission may well lapse because they haven't yet negotiated a section 106. So at some point, I think we will see it coming back to Development Management Committee for discussion and decision.
Yeah. Councillor Strawn?
It's just the fact that it's got a waiting decision, which implies that it's still in existence, so to speak, which is why I asked the question.
It is in that sense, yeah. Okay. Any last comments on planning application outcomes? No. Items for information. Biggleswade Footpath 16 and Bridleway 11. Public notice will be published in the Chronicle as to their intention, as to CBC's intention to make an order of the temporary closure of the above footpath to provide a safe working area to construct a footbridge over the railway track. Any comments on this? Councillor Bond?
Well, it says 7 days after the 12th of August, so we've missed the boat.
Right.
But looking at it, it doesn't seem very logical because it's meant to protect the work from the railway, and I just honestly don't understand why the bridleway hasn't been closed also from point B up to going north to the junction of where bridleway 11 meets bridleway 10, because otherwise you go down a bridleway you can't actually go anywhere from. And the other point from bridleway 12, point C, down to Lindsell's Crossing. Bear in mind, it's meant to be closed for 6 months for the building work. That's one of the main access is going to be used by Stories, the contractor. And they've also got a commitment to resurface that bridleway. So I honestly do not understand why those two sections haven't been also closed, because it makes no real difference to the operation of the closure. But I will make my own representations on that point.
Seems like we're too late anyway, am I right in thinking? Okay. Do we note this then? Okay, we note it. Item 13B, Orchard Chase Housing Development. Members to receive an oral update from Head of Governance and Strategic Partnerships. So this is correspondence from CBC regarding dust to Stratton Park Drive. Karim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just as briefly as I can, in addition to the correspondence which is in the pack from CBC, had a conversation with the public protection officer from the public protection team, and around a week ago, actually, I think it was on the, let's get the right bit.
It's dated 15th of August.
Thank you, on the 16th of August, in fact, because they called me. And speaking through this, obviously the abatement notice has gone out. There's a series of, to the developer, a series of measures are being put into place. What we agreed essentially was that officers and obviously members as well from BTC would kind of coordinate a kind of attendance, if you like, to monitor that the actual mitigation measures are being carried out as agreed with the site manager by CBC. I'll pause there. So we want to arrange a series of visits essentially.
Yeah, I think Councillor Foster and I have certainly visited. Some of their mitigating measures are precede us writing to the town council writing to CBC, but I think we can keep on top, perhaps via councillors if it's easier to save staff time. But thank you for your efforts on this. Are there any comments? No, it's a very difficult one because it's not really our remit, but thank you, Karim and team for pursuing this. I know ward councillors are on top of this as well. Item 14, public open session. Has anybody joined online, Karen? No, okay. Item 15, we have 2 exempt items to consider. Could somebody move the resolution that we go into exempt?
Move it.
Thank you. Any dissent? No, then we go into exempt session. Thanks. We stop the recording, we'll carry on. Yeah, sure, go on. Do you want to go? Okay. Just check. Yeah. Is it not recording now? Oh, okay. Oh, right. Okay, good. If we just end the Zoom meeting. Thank you. Okay. If we could take our seats. Go on, Peter, do you want to give an update on football?